And welcome back to another episode of PC 419. Welcome to 2021. It's going to be our first video for the year, and we are looking at the AMD 6800 XT. So our previous video was on the 6800. If you guys want to have a look at that video, we'll have that link up here somewhere. But what we'll do is we're looking at the 6800 XT from AMD. Let's get this opened up and check it out. All right, so let's have a look at the box itself. So it's pretty much identical to the 6800. Now, what I can feel the difference is the actual weight of the box does feel a bit heavier. So let's have a quick open up, and quick look see here. Got a bit of a welcome to Team Red here as well, and some writing as well. Description on what you are buying. Same description on the 6800 XT to the 6800. With obviously 4K gaming, AMD fidelity optimization, and 16 gig of RAM, and PCI 4.0 ready. So this is 16 gig of GDDR6, not GDDR6X, as what NVIDIA uses. And you've also got a bit of a card here. The packing on these are absolutely fantastic. I actually love how AMD have done this series. Let's get the card out of the box, and I've got to say, even there you can see there, it looks pretty cool. Got to say that this card does weigh much more than the 6800. I reckon the thickness as well is probably a bit thicker than the 6800, but the actual card looks identical to each other. Just the length probably the same. It was the height probably a bit slightly thicker than the 6800, and also the weight. So they've actually packed in a bit more cooler size in here, and they're both still 8-pin power connectors, and it's got the same connections as well. So you got HDMI. You've got 2 display ports and 1 USB-C as well. This is actually my personal PC. A lot of you guys have been asking about this on social media and Discord as well. So this is probably my first PC that I've had. It's not custom looped. I'm actually using an all-in-one, which I'm using the Core Liquid from MSI. And it's obviously using an Aorus motherboard here as well. So we'll be doing all the testing on this rig here as well. So hopefully this actually pulls it pretty well. We're using the 5950X from here from AMD, so I've actually gone all out to see what this rig can do with this GPU for these benchmarks. So I think what we'll do is we'll get the GPU into the motherboard and go over the specs and then go straight to the benchmarks. All right, so let's get the card into the test rig here and have a look and see what it's going to be all about, and hopefully it actually does perform really, really well. So I do have a lot of confidence with AMD's, obviously, 6800 XT, because the 6800 did perform very, very well in 1440p in my benchmarks in my previous video. So I'm expecting a bit more performance, actually probably a lot more performance in the XT version, as well as just what we can do with this rig, mainly in gaming. Obviously, we are looking at raw performance here. So plug this all in, we'll see what it actually does in the test rig itself, as well as just see if it's well worth it, to be honest. If you're going to spend the extra couple $100 on the 6800 XT, or is it just worthwhile buying the 6800? Obviously, AMD and NVIDIA at the moment are obviously in a sort of GPU war, if you can buy one, by the way, to see if it's well worth, which one's worth actually buying, particularly for its spec and your use at home as well. So if you're using DLSS and ray tracing, obviously hardware ray tracing. Now this has ray tracing accelerators in here as well, but obviously NVIDIA have got their ray tracing cores in there, or the RT cores in their GPUs as well. But let's have a look at this. Now this is probably going to power cycle a bit because obviously I've had an NVIDIA GPU in here. But my main thing is you just want to see what it looks like when it's being powered up. It pretty much looks identical to the 6800. So you're not going to see much more of a difference between the two in here. But if you can look here, Radeon sign here does light up. The fans don't light up underneath, and pretty much all you're going to get here is just light up the back here as well. So I think the best thing to do right now is we'll get this thing booted up. I'll get the latest drivers installed on here, and we'll just go straight into the benchmarks and we'll see what it's all about, as well as talking about the current specs of this GPU here from AMD. So it has 72 compute units, has a boost frequency clock of 2250 megahertz and game frequency clock of 215 megahertz. Now it does have 72 ray tracing accelerator cores in here as well. and has a pixel to fill rate of up to 288 gigabits per second. As well, it has 4,608 stream processors, as well as 288 texture units, and has 2.68 billion transistor counts. Now, the GPU power requirements on this, as AMD has stating on here, is 300 watts. The requirements for the minimum PSU requirement here is 750 watt power supply. We are using a 1,000 watt power supply in this system at the moment, but 750 watt, I would probably go for an 850 or an 800 as recommended. The GPU Infinity cache is 128 meg. It has 16 gigabits per second of memory speed, as well as a memory size of 16 gig. Now, this is only GDDR6. It's not using GDDR6X memory. It has a 256-bit memory interface, as well as 512 gigabits per second in the memory bandwidth. Now, it does support 4K HDMI. It also supports 4K H.264, as well as H.264 encode and decode as well. Also supports H.265 HVEC encode, as well as AV1. Now, the connectivity at the back is Display 1.4 with DSC, and as well as HDMI 2.1 with VRR and FRL. Now, the dimensions of the card is 267 millimeters length, and it is a 2.5-inch slot card. So it's actually not a bad size in card size. Obviously, the launch date of this one here was on the 11th of the 18th, 2020. It supports Windows and Linux. And as mentioned before, it has two 8-pin power connectors that go into it. All right, so I've got everything installed, ready to go, to get these benchmarks on the way. I really can't wait to see what this thing really can do. But let's jump straight into the benchmark video and actually see what this is capable of actually doing. So we did obviously synthetic benchmarks and a few game benchmarks as well. So I really can't wait to see. Guys, let's have a look at this. So what are your thoughts on those benchmarks? Are those benchmark scores good enough for your PC? Remember, all those benchmarks were done at 1440p as well. Pretty much all my benchmarking is done at 1440p because I do find that as the happy medium between 1080 and 4K, and also as well as that's what I use on my personal day-to-day. Now, when these cards got released, there were about 1,070 Australian dollars for the AMD variant of the Founders Edition card, we should call them, from AMD itself. Now, I have seen AIB cards go as far as 2,200 Australian dollars, and they vary between 1,400 to say $2,200. It's a big difference in price for an AIB card compared to the Founders Edition card. The cooling capability of this card was absolutely fantastic. I had no issues whatsoever. I did push it to its limits, and obviously the case was enclosed as well, so I didn't have any problems from there. So if you happen to find a Founders Edition card, it's okay. I'm not going to say that you won't get as much high overclocks as an AIB card, because obviously the cores are a lot bigger, and their IC obviously profiles may be a lot more than the standard card, but it really varies and depends on which way you want to go with your price budget as well. If I had to buy them, I'm actually really got to say that I enjoy and I actually like the Founders Edition cards compared to AIBs. I'm not saying they're not bad or they're bad. They're actually not good looking. They are, and they probably will perform a lot better than the standard cards. But I actually like the way AMD, as well as NVIDIA as well, how they do their Founders Edition cards. So me personally, I go for that. And if you are looking at putting a water block on them, they are a lot easier to actually put a block on these days. Being a reference card is because obviously EK and Bits Power and so forth and those sort of brands, do make those blocks straight away for the reference version of those cards. But I've got to say, AMD have done a very fantastic job on this card as well, as much as the 6800, as well as using SAMs as well. So we got a bit of a performance increase doing that. Obviously having the CPU use the memory from the GPU as well. So smart access memory. So the CPU uses the memory of the GPU as well to actually increase performance. And we got between 1 to 4% difference on that as well. So it's about 5 to 10 frames, which is pretty good. If you're capable of doing it, you must have a 5000 series CPU with an X570 board and a 6000 GPU as well to access smart access memory. But guys, what do you think of the 6800 XT? I've got to say that it's pretty good. So let us know in the comments below as well. We'll have a description as well. We'll pretty much have the links in the description below as well. If you guys haven't joined our social media, all the links will be in the description below. But guys, I want to thank AMD for sending out the 6800 XT. Is it worth it for you? Let us know in the comments. If not, let us know as well. But guys, thanks once again for joining in, and guess what? I'll see you next time.